Happy New Year, everyone. We've got two big snowstorms on the way over the course of the next 10 days as we transition into a much more colder look during that time frame. Plus, we're going to walk you through these weather maps and show you how to read each one of them. So I appreciate all my subscribers out there that followed all my daily content throughout the 2023 season. And since the beginning, this channel is up to 219,000 subscribers. I put out a lot of content on this channel. I've done over 1,300 videos. So if you hadn't subscribed already, please do so. And so you can follow me along and with all my daily content. So let's start off with the overall jet stream. And so we're what we call an El Nino pattern, where you typically have a much more active subtropical jet stream that's coming off the Aleutian Islands, taps into this lower jet stream, the southern branch of the jet stream, and you get these low pressure centers that traverse across. And this, the darker the color here, these yellow shaded areas, that means it's going to be fairly fast moving, what we call progressive moving systems. As these lows will be moving across, they're going to be screaming pretty fast. So they're not going to be able to leave that much rain in its wake, but they are going to be bringing some instability across this region. So as we go into tomorrow on your Tuesday time frame, this is your precipitation type map, right? So you're looking at the green shaded areas. That's where the rain is going to be, as these low pressure centers will be traversing across. Down here is the graph on the bottom of the screen here. So the lighter the color, it's not as heavy. The darker the green, you start to look at a little bit more heavier rain. And then once you get into the orange shaded areas and the yellow shaded areas, that is your higher amount of rain. That's more moderate amount of rain, about a ½ inch amounts. So the blues, that is your snow. So we'll have a system that's coming in from the Pacific Northwest, raining along the coast. And then once you get into the interior regions, into the higher elevations, that will transfer over to snow. And then all eyes will be trending further south with a chillier rain that will be draped across Texas on your Tuesday time frame. And that will be traversing across into the southeast, going throughout that Wednesday and Thursday time frame. So look where the low pressure center is by Thursday afternoon. You see how fast it's moving? It was over Texas on Tuesday. Thursday afternoon, it's way out here in the Atlantic, right? So in its wake, we are going to be leaving some rain within that low pressure center. So it's going to start from the low pressure, the center that's coming off the Aleutian Islands. This is your overall precipitation between now and that Thursday afternoon time frame. Looking at the map here, again, the lighter the color, look at a 1/10 of an inch all the way up to a 1/4 inch. Once you get into the blue shaded area, that's where you're looking at maybe ½ inch of rainfall. Once you get into the pink shaded areas, that's when you're looking at possibly over 1 inch of rainfall. So as this system comes across, dives down from the Aleutian Islands, leaves a swath of precipitation, especially along the coastal regions, into California, all the way down into the desert Southwest, back into Nevada, get into Arizona, through New Mexico region, will be swinging across Texas, heavier amounts further south into Texas, and then traversing across this boundary. So this low pressure center will be closer to the coast, tapping into that higher water content value down into the Gulf of Mexico. So that's why these areas along the I-10, I-20 corridor would likely pick up an inch or two of rainfall, even with a fairly fast progressive moving system. But you can see it swings across through Georgia into Florida, but then out into the East Coast. But for the next couple of days, you're still on the drier side for much of the northern branch of that jet stream. But once we hit Friday, that's when things get a lot more active. So this is going to be our beginning stages of our first big snowstorm. And then we have yet another one that's going to be developing around the 8th time frame, the 8th, 9th, and 10th. So let's talk about this one. This is Friday, right? So you got the area of instability. So you got these blue shaded areas, green shaded areas. That depicts more unsettled weather, colder weather. When you look to these areas across the north, to the red shaded areas, that's a drier slot. That's warmer conditions across this region. So underneath this low pressure center, you've got a lot of instability. You've got a lot more unsettled type weather, and that's where the rain and the snow is going to be. So this low pressure center will be traversing across the Texas panhandle. You've got heavier rain on the south side. Look at the darker color. So the darker color here, look at the graph here. That's a ½ inch, almost to an inch of rainfall within that 6-hour time slot on Friday afternoon. So that's some heavier rain further south into southeast Texas, into South Texas, into East Texas. But further north, we're talking about some snow going to be breaking out across the Texas panhandle, through portions of Oklahoma, getting into Kansas. This red shaded line here, that is your freezing line. So that's where temperatures would likely be below freezing further north, and then further south would be above freezing as this traverses across. So as it does, it's still fairly progressive. So it's still going to be swinging across the southern flank here, leaving more heavy rain in its wake. But this one's got a little bit more colder air associated with it, and it's going to be stronger. So as it moves through, look where the low is, 997. So the lower the pressure, the bigger the storm, the colder the storm, the more unsettled weather it can be. Plus, you're going to have some higher winds are going to be associated with it. So this is going to be closer to the Gulf, where it's going to tap into more of that Gulf moisture. And this is the system that will be setting up a significant snowstorm once we get into that Saturday afternoon, going into that Sunday time frame. We've got a bona fide 988 millibar low pressure setting up shop just off the Carolina coast here. And that's the system that we're going to have to be concerned about as this races up the eastern seaboard heading into that Saturday afternoon. So as it comes across, we've got a lot of water vapor content associated with it. Look at the darker greens here. That's definitely some heavier rains are going to be associated with this, especially along the coastal regions. Once we get inland, it's going to be transferring to all snow. And look at the graph here. These darker colors definitely indicate some pretty significant heavy snows are going to be flying across Virginia, West Virginia here, through up here to, getting into the portions of the mid-Atlantic as the low pressure center continues to rapidly deepen down to a 988 millibar low pressure just right off the coast there. So we're likely going to be seeing some heavier snow swaths across this region, just north of, say, Delaware here into New Jersey, getting into portions of Pennsylvania, heading up into New York, as this system will continue to swing, up the East Coast and continue to rapidly deepen. Here's the GFS. So I'm kind of showing you right now, these are the global models that we kind of look at on comparison as this storm kind of makes its way. And both of them are pretty much on par, putting that storm placement right up there across the Northeast, with some very heavy snow going to be originating on Saturday afternoon going into Sunday. So now let's break it down as far as the ensembles, because what we're looking at, that's a model run that typically runs about every 12 hours or so, but these are your ensembles. So the European model is broken up by 51 different members. So what you're looking at is kind of a snapshot of the snow over these 51 members. So this is about half of them right now. So if you look at this, there's a lot of members showing some pretty significant snows across the Northeast during that Saturday and Sunday time frame. If we look at the next half, this is the second half of ensemble members. Again, you're looking at some pretty significant areas, with looking at some pretty significant snows across this region. So this far out, I wanted to kind of show you the breakdown on what we look for as far as forecasting these snowstorms kind of this far out, and break it down for you. And it all really depicts on these ensembles. So the more ensembles are starting to hint and say, hey, this is going to be a system, and you always want to look at around 40% or so. Obviously, the higher the number, the more confidence that this is going to happen. But yes, by looking at this, it's pretty confident that we're going to be looking at some significant snows heading into Saturday and Sunday this weekend. So by the time we head into Monday, that system will be racing off the East Coast. But yes, we have yet another system, and this will even be colder than that system. So it's a step down process. The first one's mainly rain. The second one's going to be a significant snowstorm for the Northeast. The third one, the third system, which is the second snowstorm, will be traversing across the same areas, same subtropical jet, leaving some heavier snows during that Monday morning, January the 8th timeframe. So looking at the graph here, 90 millibar low pressure setting up some snows across New Mexico, through Colorado, back into the Texas Panhandle. Look at the tighter isobars. That's an area showing pretty high winds are going to be associated with it. There's your freezing line, right, as we go into that Monday time frame. But looking at the water vapor transport index, and I show you this of how much water content that's going to be possibly available with this low pressure, and it's pretty significant. So looking at the graph here, basically the higher the number, the higher the water content, and this is literally off the chart. So there's going to be a lot of precipitation going to be wrapped up into this low pressure center as this moves across. So it's definitely going to be some very heavy rain for some, and then very heavy snows for other if you're on that colder side of the storm. So going into that Tuesday timeframe, the 9th, that's when this one starts to rapidly deepen, folks. Now we're talking a 980 millibar low pressure setting up over Missouri into Illinois. All right. So these, again, the lower the pressure, the tighter the winds, the bigger the isobars, the heavier winds are going to be associated with it, the more unsettled weather. So, I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we could actually be even talking about a blizzard by that time frame. But definitely some heavier snows and definitely some very heavy rain is going to be associated with because of all that higher water content. So let's break it down on who could possibly get the rain and who could possibly get the snow with this particular system. So yes, we have another system that's going to be racing up the southeast and up the eastern seaboard on the northwest side of there, heading into that Tuesday afternoon. As this low pressure continues to deepen, we're going to get some heavier snows across Kansas here, into portions of Oklahoma, getting into Missouri, back into Illinois, through Indiana, as well as into Ohio here, and going up the eastern seaboard. I'm showing you this because of all the extreme water content. This is your precipitation water anomalies, how above or below normal they are. So these brown shaded areas, by then the low pressure center is going to be out, so you got below average precipitation during that time frame on that Tuesday, January the 9th. But all the instability is going to be right around that low pressure center. So when you start to see these areas of 300, 400, 500% above normal, where you typically are during that time frame, that particular day, that is a lot of water content associated with that low pressure. So you're likely going to be seeing some significant rains, and definitely where it's cold enough, you're going to be getting some significant snows within this region. So the low is likely going to be over Indiana by the time we head into that January the 9th time frame, setting up some pretty significant snows across Missouri, Illinois, getting into Indiana, back into Pennsylvania, into New York, and then heading up into Wisconsin, into Michigan by then, as this continues to deepen on its own and continue to race up the eastern seaboard. This will be the 10th time frame, but it kind of shows you that northern branch getting some very heavy snow on top of that first system that will be moving in this weekend. So when we're looking at the Climate Prediction Center, looking at their overall probability outlook for that 6 to 10 day time frame, yeah, the darker the green here, folks, that is your heavier rains. They're going to be associated with that more active subtropical jet through California, getting into the desert Southwest. This will traverse across And then there's the eastern seaboard with all the darker green showing up with that very higher water content values. And that just continues with that second system, right? That's that second system that comes across through the Ohio Valley and then up into the southeast and into the East Coast. So if you break it down for these two snowstorms and looking at the blend, so this is your national, the National Weather Service blend of models. It takes the GFS, it takes all the global models and kind of combines it into one. So right now, you would look at that this far out, combining these two snowstorms on what all the models are actually saying at this time frame and kind of breaking it down. So you don't want to look at fine tuning exactly these snow amounts. What you're looking at for is the placement of snow. So we're likely going to be that first system that will be coming up into the mid-Atlantic and up into the Northeast. And then you got that second system that will be diving in from the Intermountain West, setting up shop across the Texas Panhandle, leaving a swath of snow across, Colorado, through portions of Oklahoma, into Kansas, back into Nebraska here. That's the system that'll be coming up into Missouri, through Illinois, into Indiana, in Ohio, and especially up here into Michigan, as well as into Wisconsin, going up into, eastern Canada with those particular snowstorms. So yes, we've got some pretty active weather that's going to be taking shape over the course of the next 10 days. And then we're going to just transfer into a much colder look as we're going into the coldest time of the year and a likely more active setup by far going forward. So I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch the next update where I protect you before and after the storm.